Man, I love it because you get to try to encapsulate 18 years of a person's life into a minute and a half, 2 minutes each, right? Which is completely impossible to do. But I really love it because I remember that when you all see that there are people in this room who've been praying for 18 years, who were there for all of those pictures, right? So you were raised by not just your family, you were raised by this family to a large degree as well. And so now we, as a church family, get to honor you and celebrate you. And of course, we start out with this here, but I'll have some words for you as well. We did senior lunch this week. And first of all, senior lunch I love. We did it for however many years, 50 years or whatever worth of senior lunch. We have all of the whole senior class come over. We give them a little lunch, a little party, some words of encouragement. We pray for them, and we send them back. And we do that every year, except for last year. And last year, I understand we're not supposed to talk about last year. Is that right? We just don't talk about it, don't mention it, pretend it didn't happen. But this year, it was even more of a challenge to get ready because we're doing kitchen reconstruction at the same time. And so for everybody who helped make senior lunch happen, I really appreciate that. Melissa and Cindy made cupcakes, and Gerald was even helpful once in a while, which, I mean, it happens. But Edith and May and Rick and Michelle and Michelle's culinary class over at this school, it took a bunch of people to make that happen. So I just want to say thank you again for that as well. And I spoke with the kids a little bit on, I say the kids. Am I allowed to do that? Am I old enough now that I can just say I spoke with the kids? I spoke with the graduating seniors on Wednesday a little bit, and so some of you're going to get a little repetition this morning. But when I speak with that group, I just give a little talk, but when I come here, I get to preach. And so this morning I'm preaching, and it's not just to seniors or to high school students. If you get nothing out of it this morning as an adult, it's because you weren't paying attention. It's not my fault, okay? So listen, as Clinton says, I'll probably have to listen to get something out of this morning, right, Clinton? Yes, you probably have to listen. Go ahead and turn to Matthew chapter 7. We're going to look at the verses that Christian read for us this morning. We'll get there in 1 second. While you're turning there, I want to introduce to you my tape measure. I left my tape measure at home, and so I texted Shelly and said, would you bring my tape measure? And I should have said, would you bring my good tape measure? Because men know this. You got a good one, right? And then you got the other ones. This is the other one. I have a good one that's real sturdy. It's got the rubber coating on it, the rubber casing. And it's we learned on Wednesday, I had the students help me figure out that it's 25 feet long, right? 25 feet long, that's one of the good ones. And Shelly has projects for me. And the latest one was she wanted a gate. She wanted me to build a little gate between the room where the dogs hang out and the kitchen. So she wanted them to stay in this room but still be able to kind of see into the kitchen and hear us when we're in there. And so she showed me a picture of this little gate, and I said, I can build that. I'll need to get some lumber. I'll need to set up my saw and get some hardware and a drill and a square, but I wouldn't even start to do a project like that without my tape measure, right? I need to know how wide is the gap, how wide is the door that we're trying to fill, how tall does the gate need to be, how long. You measure twice, Carl, and you cut once, right? Measure twice, cut once. I wouldn't even set out to do a project without having my tape measure. Kayla and some of the students from her physics class this week were building a trebuchet. You'll have to look it up if you don't know what a trebuchet is. Virtualtrebuchet.com is a real place. Yeah. And they were using my good tape measure because you've got to measure stuff if you're going to build it well. So students who are graduating are recognizing that they're in a position now where they're building their life. Now, we're all to some degree building our life. You're just at this critical point of building your life. Well, for the last, 18 years, how about this? Let's start here. For the last 12 years, you've been measured at school, right? They give you grade cards every few weeks. They give you a report card. They're measuring the progress that you're making in your classes. If you're going to college or even thinking about going to college, you take an SAT or an ACT and you get measured on your progress. They say it's a measurement of your readiness for college, right? Whether it is or not, you're getting measured. When you do athletics, you're getting measured. If you do long jump, you're literally getting measured by, see, it's not my good tape measure, see? It's not the good one. You're getting measured, did you jump farther than the next person? Or we measure athletics by wins and losses, which is not always the best way to measure whether you've had a successful athletic endeavor, whether it's just been wins or losses, right? But you've got years and years and years of getting measured, and now you're building your own life, and I wondered, how do we measure if we're going to build a good life? What do you use to measure the quality of your life? Which brings us to Matthew chapter 7, which Christian read for us just a few minutes ago. And just follow along as I read this. I didn't know if I was going to be able to do this without my old man glasses or not. I can't. Excuse me. These are my good ones. Matthew chapter 7, verses 24 to 27. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose. You can almost hear the song, right? The rains came down and the floods came up. And the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rains came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. It looks to me like Jesus is naming there are two different kinds of people who are building a life, right? There are wise people, there are foolish people. That's not a lot of options. Wise people, foolish people, but we get to choose, apparently, right? Whether we want to do the wise thing or the foolish thing. So let's start with the foolish guy. Jesus said, if you hear my teaching and refuse to apply it, then it's like you're building your house, like you're building your life on a poor foundation, a foundation of sand, right? When the fool sets out to build his life, he has this foundational problem. And I would say he has a measuring problem. Let me tell you what I mean. I think, and you can tell me if this is true, a lot of people think that we should measure our life by how much money we make, how much money we have. Does this sound familiar? If I have more money than the next guy, then my life must be better than the next guy's. If I have enough money to buy the stuff I want when I want to buy it, then I must have a pretty good life. A life that's measured by money. Does the Bible teach anything about money? The number that I found this week was, only 800 times does the Bible talk about money. So we're going to go through those one by one this morning, if that's okay. Yes? No? I'm going to give you just, I'm going to give you the synopsis. Ready? Money is good. You're going to need to have some. Loving money is bad. It's going to drag you under if you love money. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, same chapter, two different verses. When God gives someone wealth and possessions and the ability to enjoy them, to accept their lot and be happy in their toil, this is a gift of God. Ecclesiastes 5:19. Money, having stuff, is a gift from God. Having stuff and the ability to enjoy it and the ability to work to get it, that is a gift from God. God is not anti-money. Same chapter, different verse. Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. So you see the trap, right? You see what happens if we measure the quality of our life by how much money we have. I want you to have money. you need to learn how to make money. I'm looking at you seniors. You need to learn how to make money, right? This is how we provide for our family. This is how we provide for others. But I don't want you to build your life. I don't want you to measure the quality of your life on how much money you have or do not have. It's a bad measuring stick. Don't build your life on the sand. Okay, so what if we had a different measuring tool for whether we were building a good life? What if we used happiness? I mean, after all, right there in the Declaration of Independence, right? One of the inalienable rights, the pursuit of happiness, right? Maybe we can measure the quality of our life by whether we're happy or not. Oh, this sounds better than money, right? Question. How long does the happiness last? How consistent is the happiness? See, here's what happened. We started redefining happiness as some temporary feeling that we have in any given moment. We attached it to our mood. I feel happy as opposed to feeling unhappy. Well, yeah, I want you to feel happy more than you feel unhappy. I don't want you to measure the quality of your life on whether you're always happy or not. We got a new puppy. You met the new puppy this morning. Puppies are happy. Getting a puppy is happy. We were happy for several hours when the puppy came home, right? Puppies make you happy. He still makes me happy. And then at 6 a.m. when I wasn't ready to get up yet and I'm going through the house and I'm barefoot and I'm figuring out that the puppy is not fully house trained, I'm not happy anymore, right? The happiness comes and goes. The happiness is a temporary thing. I want you to have some happiness in your life, Rosa. I want you to have happiness. But I don't want you to build your life or measure your life on happiness. I don't want you to build your life on the sand, okay? So where do we go? Is there a better way? Does Jesus have anything to say about, well, he's the one who said, listen to my teaching and build your life on my teaching. So let's see maybe what he says about the wise builder. Go right back there to verse 24. Everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like the wise man who built his house on the rock. The wise builder is the one who hears and follows Jesus' teaching. So there are at least 800 things that Jesus taught, so we'll go through those one by one this morning. We got time for all this, right? I want to boil down what I think Jesus is saying here. If there was one thing, if you were to ask Jesus, what's the one thing that would be most important that I can lay down as a foundation, one way that's really good to measure my life by, would you want to know what that is? Let's start with the main one. We're not the first ones to ask this question, by the way. If you flip over to Matthew chapter 22, keep your finger there in Matthew 7 because we're coming back. But flip over to Matthew chapter 22. I'm going to start reading at verse 36 because there's a conversation here between a Pharisee expert in the law and Jesus. And the Pharisee expert in the law asks Jesus this question in verse 36. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? What's the most important thing, right? Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. It's interesting to me, first of all, that the guy asks Jesus for one thing and Jesus gives him two. Jesus is kind of notorious for not exactly answering the question that you asked. But what is fascinating to me is Jesus, in the conversation about the law, brings it all immediately to relationships. Do you see it? Love God. Love your neighbor. We understand what it means to have these core relationships, don't we? what if we built on this? What if we measured the quality of our life not by money or happiness or any of those temporary things? What if we measured the quality of our life by the quality of these core relationships? Now, some relationships are certainly more important to us than others, but in that core relationship, you would have to say your relationship with God is right there at the core, right? You would have to say that there are some other people who fit in that sort of core set of relationships for you, right? What if we measured our life by the quality of those relationships? Would anyone in this room agree with me that the last year has been pretty challenging? Yeah? The students on Wednesday, some of them looked a little disturbed when I told them, oh, you'll have worse, don't worry. What? It gets worse? Well, it gets better and it gets worse. Yeah, it's a long story. Don't worry, you'll catch it. You'll get there. Who do you think is doing the best when the times get most challenging? Because you remember Jesus' picture, right? The wise man built his house on the rock, and the rains came, and the storm came, and the winds beat against the house, but it stood firm, right? Whose house is standing firm right now? Isn't it the people who have this core set of relationships really figured out? Can't you look around you and say, you know what, I think the people who are doing the best are the ones who have this love for God, love for the people in their life, who have these really good relationships? That seems to me to be a much better way to measure the quality of your life, measure the quality of those relationships. And I think you'll agree with me, when the rains come, when the storm comes, when the wind beats against the house, the solidity of those relationships is what's really going to matter, right? I hate to leave students without a, what do I do about this? I call it a so what. Because you could agree with me that this is really important, and you could also say, I don't know how to do that. So let's go ask Jesus one more time. If there was one thing that I could do that would help the quality of those relationships, if there was one thing, can you start me somewhere? Because I think Jesus answers this question for us too. Back in Matthew chapter 7, if you're flipping back and forth, go back to where your thumb was. Matthew chapter 7, this is verse 12. This is Jesus speaking again. So in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. Do you hear that phrase again? From the greatest commandment, all the prophets, all the law hangs on this, all the law. And here's the summing up of the law and the prophets. Do to others what you would have them do to you. Many of you have heard this before. What do you call it? What's the name of this? It's the golden rule, right? Even people who don't know that Jesus said it know it's called the golden rule, right? By the way, rule, ruler, measuring stick, are you following? The golden rule, the measurement by which we can figure out how are our relationships going. The golden rule, do to others as you would have them do to you. This is actually fairly simple. It's not easy. It's fairly simple. But if you want to be treated, for example, with respect, then you treat other people with respect, right? Do you see how the golden rule works? You want to be treated with patience. You want people to treat you as though you don't have it figured all out yet and you're still kind of growing. Be patient with me. God's not finished with me yet. You want people to treat you with patience. You treat people with patience. Isn't that what the golden rule says? Or forgiveness. You want people to treat you with forgiveness. You know you're not perfect. You know you have messed up. You know you've hurt someone. You want them to forgive you. You want to be forgiven. You treat people with forgiveness. The golden rule. So, graduates, and everybody else in the room and everybody in front of their computer or TV or phone at home, I want you to build your life. I want you to imagine what the world would look like if everybody lived by the golden rule. Is that the same world as what you see around you right now? No, it is not. Can you control whether anybody else lives by the golden rule? No, you cannot. Can you measure the quality of your own life by this golden rule? Can you build a life that has a solid foundation that is measured by the golden rule? I think that you can. I think that's the point of all these things that Jesus is telling us. I want you to build your life, Logan. I want you to build your life, Christian, Rosa. I want you to build your life. But I don't want you to measure it poorly. I don't want you to use the wrong stuff to measure it. Don't measure it with money and happiness. Don't build your life on the sand. Measure your life by the quality of your relationship with God and with others, and build on that kind of rock. I'm going to ask those three to come on down to the front.